I arrived to the old school, and the first thing that I paint was a self-portrait. But it wasn't because Old said that, but the students, the student corps said, like, you should start with a self-portrait. And I started, and then I never stopped.
I'd like to thank our top sponsors Bergamo, Matthias Proy, Sean Roberts, Viorel Trandafir, and Fergus Ryan for making this show possible. And welcome to the Cave of Apelles. Making self-portraits is a way of saying thank you to nature, depicting yourself in different roles, expressing varying emotions, can help you empathize with the primal human condition. If you can see yourself as another, you can see others as yourself. I learned this from my guest for the evening, who will also provide a definitive answer to the age-old question, does it have to look exactly like yourself? Melisa Calabria, welcome to the Cave of Apelles.
Thank you for receiving me.
So, does it have to look exactly like yourself?
We start like this then. Well, yes. It must. At the very beginning, when you start to go on the self-portrait, the first you have to reach is to look like yourself. And when you reach that, then you can deform it, but knowing that you can reach that level of looking, of likeness. Yes, I think it's very important, but it's not the point later. If you want to continue with the storytelling, for example. But I think that when you start and when you start painting, and when you start painting self-portraits, then the first goal is to look like yourself on the canvas.
That's sufficient, a sufficient theme to just be able to do that in the very beginning. Yeah.
In the very beginning, yes. And then, yes, you can deform it and be someone else or be yourself, like very deeply like you are. But the first, I think, is to do a study and try to reach the likeness. And it doesn't matter the motion, and it doesn't matter the story. It's just a study to improve your painting. It's like a technical. It's the first, so it's very important.
Yes. Just not confuse that with the ultimate goal of it, right?
Well, everything has its steps, right? First you learn the words, then you learn how to build sentences, and then you make a story, right? So the likeness, I think, is the letters. And then the sentences, well, we will talk about that.
Yeah.
And then the story, yes.
Yeah.
So yes, it's very important.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same procedure in the pure technical sense. Like, I guess no matter what level you're on, first you get that general totality, and you're mindful that things are where they are, and that's enough. And then you start sharpening, creating some kind of focus, and then you start building whatever story there is, right?
It's not to reach the end at the very beginning, right? You have to start with the beginning.
That's sound advice.
Yes.
I want also to get to your self-portrait on the wall here, and why we have these Rembrandt self-portraits on the shelf. But perhaps then, now that we've sort of clarified the question, does it have to look like yourself? We should rewind a little bit and just talk about you and your development. Like, I mean, you come from Argentina. How is the situation there for painting figurative, and what you learned there, and what your hero's journey has been?
Okay. Well, I studied at the art university for some years, and I quit because I haven't found the reason to be there. So I developed my skills on particular workshops of painters from Buenos Aires, where I found that
in their studios,
in their own studios, yes, privates. So I learned the craft there. Or at least as much as I could. I received the teachings from private studios. And I work as an assistant of one of them, as Ricardo Celma is my teacher from Buenos Aires. So I think that with him I prepare myself so much, I learn so much. And at his studio I learn about odd. So my goal was to go to study with him,
right,
as an odd living master, right? So I think that there I found the tools for applying and come. So after,
can you, just to stop a little bit, can you say a little bit about his background and what like the bullet points of what you learned from him? What's the most basic things?
Yes, of course. Well, as I work as an assistant, I work for him painting backgrounds, just like a Renaissance atelier.
Yeah.
So I learned to build and render the form, and to think about stories, and to think about philosophy as a base.
He was concerned with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, well, it's like go there, paint, and talk a lot about different topics. If we read a book, or if we listen to a conference or an interview, or different music, classical music or not classical, but interesting. So it was quite a really great base, I may say. And it built myself to be prepared to come here and take all the knowledge that I could. I mean, to the old Nerdrum school. So after maybe 8 years working there, I applied to old school, and I came.
And what was the first? Because you've been here. This is the second time you were here, right?
This is the second time.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the first time you were here was in which year?
In 2019.
Okay.
At the very end of the 2019. And after that, I continue developing my skills working as an assistant. I continue. It's like my Argentinian mentor, so it's like I'm very lucky to have two mentors. So when I lose my path, then I can come to Norway, or if I'm in Argentina, then I can also go to my teacher.
But it's interesting to hear if you can describe a little bit more about, if you can repeat the name of your mentor in Argentina, what he told you about what the purpose of painting is, what the goal of it is did he talk about something similar when it comes to more sort of archetypal motifs, or what was his approach to that?
His name is Ricardo Celma.
Celma.
Yeah. Yes. Well, the way I learn there is not absolutely the same as odd, but the importance of story and how to relate it and to make it and to build it with sense, like show what is happening there.
So it's a logical story.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a logical way to show a story or a character or a situation, right?
Yeah.
That was the way.
Yeah, because that when you shall try to tell stories, I see sometimes it can lead to more sort of symbolism, adding symbols to the painting, and that's supposed to be the story, but it doesn't really give any kind of narrative to what is happening. So, but it's interesting to hear that he would focus on having some kind of logic in the story, though it's not just things randomly placed together.
Yes, every element on his paintings has a purpose, a reason, a why behind.
Right, great. Yeah, so that's a solid fundament. But then you come to the Nerdrum Studio, and what was the basic thing there, or what was new for you, or what did you have confirmed coming there?
Well, I think that the answer is the purpose of this talk, because I I arrived to the old school, and the first thing that I paint was a self-portrait. But it wasn't because Old said that, but the students, the student corps said, like, you should start with a self-portrait. And I started, and then I never stopped. So I'm working with a mirror, which wasn't the way the other studio where I was working with my teacher. So I started to...
You would paint from photo there? Or?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So I started to painting myself, looking at the mirror, which was a really big deal. Wasn't that easy as I thought. And mostly after painting from picture is more easier in a way, because you have the translation from the three-dimensional to the D-dimensional.
Still all the time, and you can measure exactly.
Yes, it's like it's a easier way, I think. Well, everything has its difficulties, but so there started the self-portrait journey. We could say. Well, by painting self-portraits and the old Nerdrum school, I start to think why, right? What's the reason behind the self-portrait? Why is the first painting you paint at this old Nerdrum school? Why? Why is that important? Why is the base, right? Because if it's the first, it is the base. And in a way,
it's not by chance.
I don't think so. All these very intelligent minds. So, and by thinking, I found out that the beginning is oneself, right? You start being yourself, and then you start to have relationships and experiences. But then you are born, and it's you, and just that's all. You begin with yourself.
That's fine. That's a nice image. Then it's sort of your birth as a painter goes through the self-portrait. Yeah.
Well, we can make this relation as a fractal of human life and being a painter. But yes, I found out that the base or the core or the beginning should be oneself. And that's why I think that the self-portrait is the first painting, and to find that beginning, and it's a way to find yourself and who you are, right? It's very important as a painter to know who you are, because that includes where you come from, where are you, or where do you want to belong, or where do you want to go. And as a painter, to have those questions inside your mind and think about them and try to find reasons and answers, well, it's the way that you will develop your painting and which path are you going to choose, right? For example, knowing where you belong, you will know your roots, you will know where it starts your story, and where you are in history, and what's the possibilities, right? And where you want to belong is, well, just take the path and go there.
It seems like it's one thing I've been concerned with, that I've spoken to several guests about, is that because you're concerned with also the archetypal image also, and we can perhaps start to talk a little bit about your self-portrait here, that you're talking about finding out who you are. So it's sort of a self-development, like in the technically and storytelling-wise, and sort of quite personally as well. But then it reminds me of this idea that you can reach something that is archetypal and more eternal, but through your local situation. For example, that you have a strong experience from where you are from, in relation to the landscape there, or to something else that is typical for the way stories are told in that country, or something like that. And then that can be the door into that collective unconscious archetypal realm.
Well, I don't know if to reach the archetypal must be the goal, like I will paint an archetype.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that that's a strange way of thinking.
Right.
Or to find a good painting or try to paint a good painting is, I will paint the mother. It's quite strange. But coming back to the idea of the self-knowledge is, as much as you know yourself, as much as you are concerned about your emotions or aware about your emotions and how will you react or how you are in a particular situation, then you can paint that emotion or that experience or that situation. And as much deep you go on that, then I think you will reach some sort of archetype idea. Because, for example, I like the example of if you're going to paint yourself or someone else that is about to be killed, right? How would you react on that? How would you, with fear, with an heroic attitude, with anxiety? And that is very human, right? That I think the idea of the archetype is to go to the most human way that you could be. For example, in this self-portrait is some kind of mother archetype, right? It's the milk and the first food and the abundance and she's like giving you a welcome feeling with the full glass of food for you. And she may have a little baby and is in the house that is there in the background. Yeah. Little house in the...
It's a very delicate little house.
So she may have a baby because she has milk. But she's offering it to you. It's like this this idea of this abundance. And then I find the archetype.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if it's the first goal, but the first idea is the abundance. So I paint the mother because of the idea that comes before.
So, and that's touching on an interesting issue then, that you have this idea that, well, you can only paint what you've experienced yourself because then you know it. Someone would say that, and so if you're not the mother, you couldn't paint a self-portrait or depict the idea of the mother. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that your experiences are food for your paintings. As much as you have, as much ideas you could get, but it's not about to paint the literal idea. It's about to make a poetical. It's about poetry. It's not about naturalism. As I have this, I will paint this. No, it's more like, well, I have experienced this. How can I tell this without being that direct? Because it's not very interesting, I think.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's interesting what you said. That then you don't start with, oh, I'm an archetypal painter, which can be a sort of hubris idea. Oh, I paint that, and therefore I'm a good painter, and perhaps the painting itself is not very good, but you think it's good because you have the idea in your head. That this can be a trap. But what you say then reminds me of what I read in that introduction to the Poetics, that the universal content is a byproduct of trying to craft a good story. So, and this plays back to what you said earlier about having the logic of what is happening. And making it realistic in that sense, not in the sense of the realistic way of painting, but that the scene is realistic. And when you don't think, I shall be archetypal, then you can perhaps reach the archetypal.
Well, yes. If you are very concerned on reach something, then you will do the opposite, right? It's like, I don't have to be nervous, and then you are nervous. So yes, I think that if you're aware of your emotions and how you are and how your behavior is kind of a mirror of everyone else. It's like we all are humans. We all have the same emotions. Maybe we react in different situations in different ways. but the emotions are the same. So if you're aware of that and you go for that instead of reach the archetype, then you will reach the archetype.
Yeah. Yes, that's a strange, that's that the Taoistic idea, the Wu Wei, which means something like non-forcing or effortless action. Alan Watts talks about it as non-forcing. You don't force it. You can't force someone to love you, right? That's not how it works. So it's maybe it's the same thing that you're describing there.
That's why I think that coming back to the beginning, when you asked me about this likeness, why is that important to reach first the likeness? It's because at first you have to push yourself to then relax and flow and believe on your skills and trust on your skills, because you have done it before by pressure, right? But if you have the same pressure all the time, then to build a story with pressure is you will get a stiff painting.
Well, I guess that's when you internalize the proportions and color mixing, all these things, so that you so-called don't think about it anymore, but you think with your eyes when you're working. So if you try to explain it afterwards, you don't necessarily know exactly what you did because it's so natural to you.
Exactly.
And then you can add the story, because then you freed your mind to think about other things. That's your point.
Well, you're always thinking about proportions, but it's not the same when you start that when you kind of have the skills of painting. When you reach it, then you have it inside. It's just like ride a bicycle. No, you don't think about the balance anymore. You just have it, but you are aware of not falling from it, right? So I think that with painting is the same. First you reach the goal, the likeness, and then you can ride your bicycle without hands.
Yeah.
No, but you have to be aware, not fall apart, because you can break your leg or something.
Yeah.
So it's not to forget. It's not to relax at all. It's not a relaxing action to paint, right? You are always aware of everything at the same time. But I think that to reach a good self-portrait with a story or with a emotional weight, then first you should to have to grab the skill of painting yourself as you look like.
So you establish the structure first, so that you have something to hang the story on, right?
Well, yes, everything has. If we go to nature, because we always are thinking about painting from nature, observing nature, studying nature, we can see that in nature there is always a structure. There is always something hard that can sustain something soft and amorph. Like a tree, for example, the wood is the hard part and the leaves are the amorph, right? Or the skeleton of a human body is the hard part, is the structure, is the sustained thing that supports all the flesh and the organs and all this amorph. That if the skeleton is not there, then we will be, I don't want to know. We need a structure, right? Yes. Yeah. As nature says that.
So then you're talking about, okay, so you've talked about this 3 levels of self-portraits. And I think that maybe we could start talking a little bit about Rembrandt in that context also. I guess that's why you chose these 3.
Yes, I decided of Rembrandt because I think is the man that start with the tradition on self-portrait. Because self-portrait came from before. There have always been self-portraits. Maybe before the painters hide themselves in biblical situations, right? Like Masaccio, for example, in the Pay of the Tribute. He's there. But it's not like this, right? His function was different this is a self-portrait in itself. It's only Rembrandt, and it's not only like a formal self-portrait, but with a story or with an emotional weight. So that's why I decide him about him. I'm talking about the distinctions of the 3 levels.
Yeah.
I took the idea of the 3 levels because of all he is always dividing in 3 levels, and I love it. I found it like a really great system.
Just learn a system and you're set to go. Yeah.
I took it.
Yeah. So give it to us. What's the system?
The system. Well, the first level will be this self-portrait that we have at the right side.
Left side. Yeah.
Left side?
Yeah, or left side.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's the formal, right? He was taking care of the light and the shadow and the form and to render it well, and we could analyze it and find ideas and concepts and emotions, but the main thing here is the light and the shadow and how to build a face in the shadow. I think that he was so worried about that. It's one of the first self-portraits, so he was looking to render a good image, a good face, and a good head, right? So the first level will be the goal of the first level will be to render properly, to have a consistent head with the likeness and with good development of light and shadows. And as a formal, we could say that the academic painting, like what you learn at the academies, is to build a correct self-portrait, or a portrait, or a landscape, or whatever, but correct.
It
right?
is what it is.
It is what it is. So when you get that, then you could go to the second level.
Now we're wondering what that is.
Oh, what is that? And then it's not...
Which level am I on?
You could ask yourself. So will be the opposite, the other corner, yes.
Yeah.
And then we see a young Rembrandt with this gold chain, and I think that we could entitle this level as the intentional level.
Intentional?
Yes, it's what you want to show of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about you in your deepness state, but what you want to show, how you would like to be seen, right? Because the gold chain means that he worked for the court, but he never worked for the court, but he wanted.
Mm-hmm. Social position.
It's a kind of a social position. He wanted to reach something that he didn't have, so he painted himself as he wanted to be seen, right? But it's not the true. It's like embody a character, or it reminds me as Zorn, for example. His self-portrait.
Yeah,
like
with the red jacket there, for example.
Yes, like
this is me, the celebrated painter.
Yes,
and,
like a proud, strong man. This is me, you know. I'm like this. But
this and that year.
Yes, but who is like that? You know.
Well, many people can
inside
be like
yourself. Inside, it's like I was thinking yesterday that we all, as humans, share the fragility and the vulnerability. We born as babies, and we, if we don't have our mother, we will die. We are fragile. We don't have any strength. The strength comes after.
Yeah.
Strength. Yeah. It comes after. You learn it. You don't have it. It's not natural. It's something that you have to learn to survive. But it's not what you have from the very beginning. So in a way, the second level is kind of show what I've learned, or what I want, or what I would like to be like, right? It's not the core of your...
It's like very much like Jung's idea of the persona, the mask, which is the official, your official position, or
exactly.
your role in society. Right?
Yes, you're showing your persona in the second level, and I think that from the second level, we it's like this path goes like this, and then it divides on two. And but we will go to the third level first, because it do this, it does this, and then we have the third level, and then we have the storytelling. But we will go to the third level first, and then we will see a young Rembrandt, a Rembrandt that would like to be like this man there, with likeness and everything, because it's like the second level, right? It's all from the first is in the second and a little bit more. And then the third one, that is this soul man, he lost everything. His this fragility, this vulnerability is what it is. I'm this, and I don't have to cover it or pretend anything. It's what I am. I'm sorry.
Sorry to disappoint you.
I'm so sorry. But it's I think it's a way of the true, the sincere. Is you don't have to hide anything. But I think that you must be old to paint like that. It's like this surrender. This is what I have, right? Yeah. It's to reach a level where you don't have to be someone and to fight in the world. It's the core of the human. It's this idea of the baby that is fragile and vulnerable, and we all share it, right? In our first minutes, in our first month of life, we haven't learned anything. It's like the baby is just as it is, right? And I think the third level is kind of that, is a person that paints him or herself as it is, and without pretensions. But I think that you have to reach it after showing your persona. You have to know what you want to show about yourself, to then take out your clothes and show what is the real.
Right.
Yeah. But then we have this little path that go like this. It's like a
the esoteric part here. Yeah.
And it's this the storytelling, and it's use yourself as a excuse to tell a story, right? And there is when the likeness is not that important. But it comes after the first level, right? So it was important before. So this path goes like this, and then you have the storytelling, and you use yourself as a model. I think that this self-portrait that I paint is a self-portrait, but it's not me. It's another person, but I use myself as a model. Yes, to tell something else. It's not exactly about my story or who I am, but I can't get rid of that, but it's not the point, right? Maybe it's an excuse to tell something of yourself being someone else. It's we come back to the idea of the persona, in a way.
So it's, and that's when you, if I understood you correctly, that is almost like a prerequisite then to do that, or at least it helps a lot to do that in a self-portrait, so that you can more easily, when you use a model, you don't think of a model just as that person, the model standing there on the podium, because there's a lot of this, the model trying to be Jesus Christ, or the model trying to be whatever, or depicted as, but it's just the model standing there. So when you paint a self-portrait, you try to capture different roles and emotions, then that teaches you to become more archetypal, or make it more universal, let's say. And then you are also training to see that in others, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not the same to paint a portrait. If I paint you as a portrait, I would like to reach likeness. But if I want to paint a man, a wanderer in the forest that finds a mine of gold, then it doesn't matter if it's you or someone else, but I will use yourself as a model for my story. So it's different ways to use a model. It's different goals. That's why it's this bad. But I have here Rembrandt as Zeuxis.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a good example for this storytelling, because there is likeness, but it's not the main point. And he's telling the story of how Zeuxis died, because he died laughing. It's a great story, isn't it?
Tell it. Tell it. Yes.
So Zeuxis was this painter from the antique Greece, and he received a commission from a very ugly lady. But I can't believe that she was that ugly. She killed him. Have you thought about that?
She did. She shouldn't have been that ugly.
She should have. No, but then other Nerdrum told me that she wanted to be represented as Aphrodite. I don't know. Maybe it's a funny. So this ugly lady wanted to be the most beautiful goddess, and Zeuxis had to paint her, and then he couldn't.
Just started laughing.
He just died laughing. And that portrait is about that story. And it's one of the last self-portraits he painted.
Yeah.
So we could say that he was kind of laughing about his disgraces.
Yeah. Sorry.
Before dying,
yeah.
Right? Because after that he died. Rembrandt.
And it's a nice metaphor. I mean, it's like I just think about some connection here. It's as if Rembrandt in that age, trying to be a court painter, is that old woman trying to be Aphrodite.
Oh.
You see that?
Mm.
And the aspirations you have, and to be this great person, being accepted by what is in your time, and how fragile that is. Speaking of fragility, there's this wonderful, just on that note, there's this wonderful scene in a Norwegian movie about a fairy tale, and they are lured into the mountain, and these beautiful women are serving them nice, a lot of food, chicken, all kinds of stuff. And then the last brother comes in, and he starts seeing that the whole eyes of that beautiful girl turns totally black, and then she's back again. And then more and more, suddenly he sees this old, ugly, revolting person, and the food is not the chicken, that's a dead rat, and he sees it for what it really is. And then it's like, we need to get out of here. And I think that it reminded me of that when you talked about the self-portrait of Zeuxis there. So, seeing that social pretension, that persona as that ugly lady trying to be Aphrodite is like, come on, just be what you are. Like
it's not that easy.
No.
We're very blind. It's so ridiculous, right? As much blind as you are, more ridiculous you look. So that is important, to paint yourself and to reach that self-knowledge. It's like, where are you? Who you are? What you want, right? And in Rembrandt, we can see that as on his paintings, he was one of the painters that paints more self-portraits than anyone else, but maybe odd. Nerdrum or Kate Kolovitz. But we can see also in their paintings the drama, right? And the human face, like it is, and like real. So I think that there may be a relation. It's a deep study on yourself to then paint someone else having an experience. dramatical or not. But
so you're sort of talking about the importance of knowing who you are, like literally, like for your personal life, but also as a painter. Because if you do not know what your values are and what your goal is, then you are easily lured into trying to be a court painter or something like that, right? And then you lose out on, speaking of that story path.
To be Aphrodite.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
No,
you could kill someone.
Because you're just ridiculous. Yes. Like, don't be ridiculous, that kills people.
No, please. Try to not. But yes, I think it's important for if you want to reach a nice level or to improve on painting, then start with yourself. Start knowing where are you and what you want to reach, and then you can improve with that. Yes.
And it strikes me that there are still painters today trying to be court painters, and it's so absurd that, I mean, at that time, of course, everyone were painting representational, figurative, or representational nature as we more or less see it. But today, if you want to be accepted, that's not the way you should paint, right? But still there are painters who try to be really skilled at painting to be accepted by society at large, when those values are not accepted at all, or not celebrated. Being a classical figurative painter is not the way you reach the top and become the most famous painter in the whole world.
No.
So it's even more absurd. It's even more ugly.
It's more ridiculous. It's like you don't even know why you're painting that. I think I don't want to be there, but I assume it. So yes, if we want to also to empathize, right? Because to paint is a sort of a language. We could say we are showing something. We are telling a story. We are showing a story that will be acquired by someone else, and we all have the same idea of language. We share the same words, and we share the same way of building a sentence, so we can understand each other. And I think that nature is the universal language. So if we want to our paintings be understandable for everybody, then just go to nature, and we are part of it. So you go to yourself and you will find nature. But I remember that once Odd said that to paint a self-portrait is to say thank you to nature, right? I'm here and I interpret it. I'm here and I'm here for you. Yes. So thanks.
Yeah, that's.
Thanks for this. Yes.
That's beautiful. But can you speak a little bit about this idea? This is coming back again to this idea of looking like yourself, or if it should be exactly like yourself, or what kind of sort of liberties you can take. And it's so strange. They call it, at least in Norwegian, talk about having artistic liberties to change and manipulate. But of course, it doesn't have to do with art in that sense, but with storytelling, what you choose, what you emphasize, and these things. But if you shall paint a self-portrait and you start changing it a little bit, so it's not like a spitting image of exactly you, where is the limit between that and when it becomes just an arty, pretentious thing where you start deviating too much from nature so that you go downhill again? Like, where is there anything you can say about that?
Well, I think that the concept of indifference is very important here. It's like if you start to be indifferent on your goal, then it starts to be a little bit artsy, I think. If it's to reach attention instead of to reach a potential painting, a good painting, then start to be quite strange. I think that the limit is there. Where is the goal on that deformation?
So, just trying to understand you. If you are, or my idea is that typically when people shall try to sort of be themselves and express themselves, as they say, then they fall down into the cliches of what is accepted within the art world. So if you paint a self-portrait, you start just letting the paint run, or you just make something more sketchy to sort of satisfy that idea for the unfinished painting. So that's the thing you can fall down into if you're not concerned with the goal, and the goal being some kind of story or a mood. Because you talked about having the goal in mind, not having an indifference to the goal, but the goal is then a story or some kind of mood.
The goal is to paint a good painting, and and if that goal changes, then it start to appear this limit. I think if the goal start to be expressive and it doesn't matter very much, this indifference feeling, then it's another path, right? It's the opposite as we were talking about before. So I think that's the limit when the idea of to reach a good painting with a good story or with a strong emotion behind that start to be grotesque. Because you're exaggerating to reach attention, then it's another path from the very beginning. It's not in the middle. It's just another way of painting.
But then, if you then start emphasizing some things, or making an eye more fussy to create attention to the other eye, or what examples to think of? It's not a self-portrait, but you have the Pietà by Titian with that woman coming, which is like the plague, and then how he sort of makes that concave shape on top of her head, sort of shaves her to push her down so that she doesn't leave or go up too much, right? So that is a clear manipulation, editing to create a specific effect, which is not realistic. You could argue. But so what kind of tricks like that would you use in a self-portrait, where you start to deviate from that exact shape of the eye or whatever it is, and how much can you allow yourself there? I mean, maybe it's a very general question, but
no, but I understand, and well, the example about Titian is he had a purpose on that deformation. So the purpose is always important. Then we can say that, right?
Yeah.
So to reach a good painting, you should have a purpose on the story and the render.
Yeah.
And in the self-portrait, we can make these effects to show better the emotion or the purpose of the painting. If I want to paint someone screaming, then we always talk so much about this at the Odds Nerdrum School, to think about composition in the face, what is important. So if I want to paint someone screaming, then why it will have big eyes if the mouth is the one that is important there? So it's something about also logic. Maybe the eyes could be a little bit fuzzy and the mouth very dark and in contrast with the skin, so you can hear the scream. Is this idea that I love, that to make it more real than it is, to reach the one that is looking at the painting, to get that empathy and to make this person that is looking at the painting understand that this person is screaming like hell.
Is that so? So this is hardly an original point, but I think it's an important point, the way I perceive reality. I mentioned it quite a few times. When Rembrandt paints the face here, the hands cannot be as detailed because your eye functions so that you see the hands more fuzzy when you look at the head, right? So that's like the basic thing. But then when you when you talk about painting someone who's screaming, then you're saying that is the important thing, and therefore you make the eyes more foggy or something like that. Because if not, the eyes compete with the story, which is the story, for example, in that, or the mood.
Well, the eyes had a lot of expression, and it's like the two elements that had a lot of expression in a human face is the eyes and the mouth. And then you are always thinking about balancing them. And if the story is in the mouth, then make the eyes a little bit less descriptive,
or
so you can give the hierarchy, the higher hierarchy to the mouth, which is the story. And also we can see here that the mouth of Rembrandt is not that much. It's just some brush strokes, and the eyes, they have all the weight, right? So we can see that comes the eyes, and the mouth is not there, and the hands also, they are very expressive, but they are almost there. It's like foggy and in the darkness, and they have a role, right? Because he's having her hands like this, maybe he was a little bit cold, but the main thing is on the way he's looking at you. It's the eyes. It's anything else. Everything is there, but the most important thing. And I think that you are allowed to deform with the purpose of composing, to make the story, to empathize the story as better as you can. It's the same thing as when Rodin makes these large hands or large feet, or making them more heavy, more active, or what have you. But it's interesting to see him that at least in these three examples, his face gets more and more light, and the background goes more and more darker and darker. You're right. So this is the background being very important, and then he comes forth, and then here it is, him sort of coming out of the darkness there. Yes, but now I see that he's and in this one and in the other one is very separate from the background. But then it's integrate. We have discovered something here. Yes, and that's also part of the manipulation here. You could say, you can of course find these two others too, but you see it very clearly here how he flattens basically the whole body without it being flat. But I mean, he neutralizes it very much, so it's there, but it's sort of invisibly present. And then the head gets full attention. Yes, it doesn't have these hard lines that separate him. And it helps to this idea of integration, that to render a painting that is all together and not like stickers, like it's a whole thing. That's the goal. Yeah, and then you have one thing is so losing social pretensions is quite an important thing. To become an integrate human being and integrate paintings. Yeah. It's always a parallelism there. Yeah. It reminds me also. There's this story, I don't know where I heard it. Apparently this American Indian was going to have his portrait painted. And when he shows up, then he starts taking off all his clothes. Because of course his body is a part of him, right? This is me. The whole part, yes. We have something about the human face, right?
Yeah.
It's if you don't have a face, then you are not a human.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think that we are an integrate self. We are a whole thing, and the hands and the feet and all of them can say who you are. But it's not very Occidental way of thinking. So it's But yes, we are integrating. We are looking for integration, right? That's why I think that to go to yourself, and I'm very repetitive, but to know who you are and what you want and where you want to be is part to this idea of integrate yourself, and maybe that will help you to reach an integrate painting with consistency.
Perfect. Melisa Calabria, thank you for coming to the Cave of Palace.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching. I'd like to also thank our other top sponsors, Dean Anthony, Jon Harald Aspheim, Alistair Blaine, Anders Berge Christensen, Eric Lasky, Fernando Ramirez, Herman Borge, Hårek Jordal Andreasen, Iver Ukkestad, Jack Ens Warner, Jared Fountain, Jose Luis, Marion Bu Pedersen, Maurice Robbins, Michael Iris, Stacy Evangelista, Tone-Lise Rugås, Trym Jordal, William S. Ian, and Yngve Helland for making the show possible. And remember, head over to caveofpalace.com/subscribe and become a member today. I'll see you next month.